Senator, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to start with reaction from you on what's happening on the streets of Amsterdam.
Well, look, I've been shocked, Erin, to see these reports of attacks on Israeli soccer fans who travel to Amsterdam for a Europa League soccer game. It seems like a number have been seriously assaulted. Their sole crime, of course, is that they're Jewish, they're Israeli citizens. And the fact that this has been allowed to happen, especially in a first world developed, otherwise enlightened country like the Netherlands, is just appalling.
Moving on to a more domestic issue. Mind you, I say that, Dave, and before I do move on, a lot of people feel like this is far, far away. I've got a guest coming up, Gad Saad, who is a professor who lives in Canada, who was a Jewish boy who grew up in Lebanon. He talks about what he saw as a child in Lebanon and the way that it's being repeated in this day and age. Do you feel like, are we not picking up on these signals? Is our government not taking seriously the threat that's starting to emerge in our own backyard?
I don't think we are at all. I mean, I think we've been very fortunate that we haven't had an incident like the one we've just seen in Amsterdam, given the loss of control of order on the streets, given the wide latitude that protesters preaching violent messages have been granted, given the intimidation, doxing, intimidatory behaviour they've been allowed to engage in. We're not that far away from it in Australia. And if you talk to any Jewish person in Australia right now, they do not feel safe, and they've never felt like that before in Australia.
I've been travelling, I was in Melbourne, Sydney. I've spoken to 3 or 4 with Amjad, who is this incredible Islamic man from the UAE. And I was saying to them at the end of every
I met
speech,
him, he's a good fellow.
He's incredible, isn't he? He's amazing. But I kept saying to these rooms of hundreds of Jewish and Israeli Australians, be proud of who you are, walk out, wear your kippah, show your star. I then look at what's happening in Amsterdam and go, we can't actually tell people to do that.
Well, I think, no, the sad truth is, Jews don't feel as though their safety is assured in Australia, which is why they're not wearing their kippah, they're not wearing their Star of David. Schools have extra security, synagogues have extra security. Jewish people won't come to the Sydney CBD or the Melbourne CBD on Sunday because of these almost weekly protests. This is not a normal situation, and the fact that we've allowed it to develop and more so continue to tolerate it is, to my mind, unacceptable.
No, it really is. Moving on to something very different now. Social media, 16 is a new age. What do you think of that? What's your reaction?
Look, I think I'm generally in favour of it. I mean, the Coalition has been pushing for age verification on social media for some time, and the government has been resistant and reluctant. If you've read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, or as many people have, I think the evidence in there is quite compelling about the harm that it's doing, not just because, yes, social media provides a vehicle for bullying, but also replicating bad behaviour. It's a distraction. It takes kids away from learning. It takes kids away from other activities. There's all sorts of things that are, I think, negative factors in it. And I think it's well past time that we started to address some of these. So I'm sorry it's taken the government so long to do it. I think the Coalition is in principle keen to support this legislation, and we're keen to see what the detail is.
Just quickly on to the economy, and the Treasurer and RBA Governor are once again at odds over inflation. Is Sharma's being cheeky here by focusing on headline inflation when we know the RBA prefers to look at, for obvious reasons, the underlying?
He is. He's trying to verbal the Reserve Bank Governor, and he's been caught out doing this a number of times. Clearly, headline inflation has come down in the last quarter because of the artificial one-off impact of energy rebates and other rebates. Now, once those rebates are withdrawn, people aren't going to feel the enduring effects of that. That's why the Reserve Bank rightly focuses on underlying inflation. And underlying inflation in Australia is still running at 3.5%. The Reserve Bank does not expect it to reach target rate until the end of 2025, and that's why interest rates aren't coming down in Australia.
Kevin Rudd, Senator, does he stay or does he go? Can he stay? You've got a very high experience in this space.
Well, look, I hope for Kevin Rudd's success. We want an ambassador who can do the job that needs to be done in Washington. But I'm just astonished that these tweets that he's had up on his account, yes, he's been on the public record many times of being critical for Trump, but he had these tweets up on his account up until Tuesday morning, as far as I could tell, saying, quite personally insulting and demeaning of Donald Trump. And the fact that he didn't deal with these long before now, when he was first appointed as ambassador, is just astonishing to me. And he's having to clean up. I mean, the New York Times is reporting on it today, which means people in America know about it. And it means that we are not off to a good start with this new administration. And it's a complete own goal. I mean, it wasn't necessary for this to develop. But Kevin Rudd, the government, Anthony Albanese have allowed it to develop like this.
It almost shows an arrogance, such a disbelief that he would ever get back into office, because I know that he made these comments prior to obviously taking on the ambassador role, but they knew these comments existed when they appointed him.
Look, absolutely. I mean, I raised these comments back in February, Erin, with the foreign minister at Senate Estimates. I said, there are these tweets that are still on Kevin Rudd's account. Don't you think it's perhaps a good idea that you take them down, given he's now the ambassador and given Trump at that point wasn't the Republican nominee but was running for the nomination? And they said, oh, yeah, we'll take a look at it. Well, they do it the day before. I mean, I don't think that's indicative that they have not prepared for a Trump administration, that they expected that it was going to be Harris and everything would be fine.
Yeah, of course they did.
Any good government should prepare for multiple contingencies.
Well, they've shown that they're not particularly good at that over the past couple of years or so. Senator, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.